Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her formal diplomatic jacket one last time as she walked down the gleaming corridors of the Galactic Council Station. Her footsteps echoed softly against the crystalline walls that stretched upward into impossible heights, designed to make visiting species feel small and insignificant. Today, however, Sarah felt anything but small. Behind her walked a procession of 53 humans, each representing different aspects of human civilization that had integrated with the galaxy over the past century. Scientists, engineers, artists, philosophers, military advisors, and trade specialists moved in quiet formation. Their faces showed no anger, no frustration, no dramatic emotion that the alien species around them had come to expect from humans during heated moments. The Galactic Council had summoned them for what they called a final arbitration hearing. Sarah knew better. It was an ultimatum disguised as diplomacy. As they entered the vast council chamber, thousands of alien delegates turned to observe them. The Zilithians, with their flowing tentacle-like appendages, whispered among themselves. The crystalline Quarrens chimed in harmonious frequencies that translated roughly to smugness. The insectoid Vex clicked their mandibles in what passed for satisfaction among their kind. At the center of the chamber sat the Council of Five, representing the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Each had ruled their respective sectors for millennia before humans had even discovered fire. High Chancellor Vorthak of the Zilithians spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had never been successfully challenged. Humans of Earth and her colonies, you stand before this council accused of systematic disruption of galactic order. Your species has introduced chaos wherever you have settled. Sarah remained standing calmly, her hands clasped behind her back. We are here to listen to your concerns, High Chancellor. The Quarren representative, whose name roughly translated to crystal that sees truth, resonated with barely contained irritation. Concerns? You call the complete restructuring of established trade routes a concern? You call the introduction of dangerous concepts like individual rights and democracy a concern? Dr. James Morrison, humanity's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward slightly. If I may, honored representatives, we have always sought to contribute positively to galactic civilization. Our technologies have improved life for billions across dozens of worlds. Commander Zeke of the Vex Hive made a sound like grinding metal. Improvements that require change, change that disrupts order, order that has maintained peace for 8,000 years. Sarah noticed how none of the alien species mentioned the specific improvements. They didn't talk about how human medical technology had eliminated 3 galactic plagues. They ignored how human agricultural methods had ended famine on 17 worlds. They particularly avoided mentioning how human conflict resolution techniques had prevented 14 wars in the past decade alone. The Council has reached a decision, announced the 4th member, a gas being called Whisper in Void from the Ethereal Collective. Humanity will withdraw all colonies, trading posts, research stations, and diplomatic missions from galactic space. You will return to your original solar system and remain there. The chamber fell silent. Every alien delegate expected an outburst, protests, threats of military action, or at least some dramatic human emotional response. Humans were famous throughout the galaxy for their passionate reactions to injustice. Instead, Sarah nodded slowly. When do you require our departure to be completed? High Chancellor Vorthak blinked his large eyes in surprise. You accept this decision? We respect the Council's authority over galactic space, Sarah replied calmly. However, we will need time to organize our withdrawal properly. We have civilian populations to relocate, infrastructure to dismantle safely, and ongoing projects to conclude responsibly. The 5th Council member, an ancient machine intelligence called Nexus Prime, processed this response for several seconds before speaking. What time frame do you require? Sarah exchanged brief glances with her team. Dr. Morrison gave an almost imperceptible nod. 6 months should be sufficient for an orderly withdrawal. Acceptable, Vorthak declared, though uncertainty flickered across his features. All human presence must be removed from galactic space within 6 standard months. This session is concluded. As the humans filed out of the chamber, alien delegates murmured among themselves. The withdrawal had been almost suspiciously easy to achieve. Many had expected years of legal challenges, economic warfare, or even military resistance. Humans were notoriously stubborn when they believed they were right. Over the following weeks, reports began flowing to the Council from across galactic space. Human colonies were indeed beginning evacuation procedures. Mining operations were shutting down safely. Research stations were packing up their equipment. Trade posts were honoring existing contracts while declining to enter new ones. Everything was proceeding exactly as ordered. Dr. Kellen Vesh, the Quarren Minister of Galactic Commerce, felt the first stirrings of unease during a routine meeting 3 weeks after the Council decision. His aide brought him the daily trade reports, and something seemed unusual about the numbers. These shipping volumes, Vesh resonated with confusion. They appear to be declining faster than expected. His aide, a younger Quarren named Sharp Light of Understanding, chimed nervously. Sir, the humans are not just closing their own operations. They're also canceling contracts as suppliers and service providers to alien businesses. Vesh studied the data more carefully. Humans hadn't just been independent operators in galactic space. Over the past century, they had become deeply integrated into the economic ecosystem. They provided crucial services, components, and expertise to thousands of alien-run enterprises. Find out the scope of this integration, Vesh ordered. 3 days later, Sharp Light of Understanding returned with a comprehensive report that made Vesh's crystalline structure dim with worry. Humans weren't just participants in galactic commerce. They had become indispensable to its function. Human engineers maintained the atmospheric processors on 47 worlds. Human agricultural specialists managed food production systems that fed over 6 billion non-humans. Human software architects had designed the logistics networks that coordinated trade across 70 star systems. When the humans withdrew, they would take all of that expertise with them. Commander Zeke of the Vex discovered the military implications during a routine inspection of border defenses. The Vex had always prided themselves on their collective military efficiency, but over the past 50 years, they had quietly begun adopting human tactical innovations. Their entire early warning network relied on sensor algorithms developed by human military scientists. Their fleet coordination systems used communication protocols that humans had designed. Even their weapon targeting systems had been upgraded with human-developed software that improved accuracy by 37%. The humans had never demanded control over these systems. They had simply shared their improvements freely, as they always did. The Vex had incorporated the upgrades because they worked better than anything the Vex had previously developed. Now the humans were politely requesting access to remove their contributions from all military systems before their departure. But our defense capabilities will be reduced to pre-human levels, Zik buzzed with concern to the Hive Queen. The humans are following the Council's orders, the Hive Queen replied coldly. They are removing all human presence from galactic space. High Chancellor Vorthak faced his own growing realization during a meeting with the Zilithian Economic Council. For the past 30 years, human diplomatic techniques had become the standard for interspecies conflict resolution throughout Zilithian space. Humans possessed an unusual ability to understand and work with the psychological patterns of dozens of different alien species. They could negotiate treaties between races that had been enemies for millennia. They could find compromise solutions to problems that had seemed impossible to solve. 3 major trade disputes and 2 territorial conflicts in Zilithian space were currently being mediated by human diplomatic teams. When those teams departed, the conflicts would resume with no clear path to resolution. "Perhaps we could make exceptions for essential personnel," suggested one council member. "The council's order was specific," Vorthak replied grimly. "All human presence must be removed." As the 4th month of withdrawal progressed, the scope of the crisis became undeniable. The galactic economy wasn't just slowing down, it was beginning to collapse in specific sectors where human expertise had become integral to basic operations. The medical research facility on Kepler 442b shut down when their human biochemistry team departed. They had been 3 months away from completing a cure for Vex Queen Death, a disease that had plagued the insectoid species for generations. The terraforming project on Ross 128C ground to a halt when the human atmospheric engineers packed up their equipment. Without their expertise, the project would need to be completely restarted using older, less efficient methods. Most critically, the quantum communications network that connected over 200 worlds began experiencing cascading failures. Human technicians had spent decades optimizing the network's stability protocols. As they systematically removed their contributions, message delays increased and connections became unreliable. Dr. Vesh found himself in an emergency session with representatives from dozens of species, all demanding solutions to problems that were spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. "The humans must have planned this," accused a delegate from the Thermal Collective. "They deliberately made themselves indispensable and then used that dependency to manipulate us." Whisper and Void from the Ethereal Collective disagreed. "Analysis indicates no deliberate dependency creation. Humans simply participated fully in galactic society. Their withdrawal removes their contributions naturally. Then we order them to leave their expertise behind," declared a Vex subcommander. "They offered to train replacement personnel," Sharp Light of Understanding reported. "However, the Council explicitly ordered all human presence removed. Training would require human trainers to remain beyond the deadline." The chamber fell into frustrated silence as the delegates grappled with the impossible situation they had created for themselves. Meanwhile, in the evacuation zones, humans continued their methodical withdrawal. They dismantled their installations carefully, leaving no damage behind. They fulfilled all existing contracts to the letter. They even provided detailed documentation explaining how their various systems worked, though the documentation alone couldn't replace years of practical experience. Ambassador Sarah Chen spent her final weeks coordinating the last stages of the withdrawal from her temporary office aboard a human transport ship. Through the viewport, she could see the lights of Galactic Council Station growing smaller as humanity's diplomatic mission packed up and prepared to depart. Dr. Morrison joined her at the observation deck, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a human beverage that had become surprisingly popular among several alien species. "The Zilithians are requesting a delay," he reported quietly. "They want 6 more months to train replacements for our diplomatic corps." "What did you tell them?" Sarah asked. "That we respect the Council's decision and timeline," Morrison replied. 6 months was what we agreed to." Sarah smiled slightly as she sipped her coffee. "How are the colony evacuations progressing?" "Ahead of schedule, actually. Turns out that when people are leaving voluntarily, they're quite efficient about it." Through the observation deck speakers, they could hear the controlled chaos of departure preparations. Human voices coordinated loading procedures, departure schedules, and final system shutdowns with the same calm professionalism they had brought to every task during their century in galactic space. "Any word from Earth about our reception?" Morrison asked. "The Sol system is ready for us," Sarah confirmed. "It'll be crowded with all the returning colonists, but we'll manage." "We always do." As their transport ship joined the growing convoy of human vessels departing galactic space, Sarah reflected on the past century of human integration with alien civilizations. They had arrived as eager newcomers, excited to learn from species with thousands of years more experience. They had contributed everything they could, sharing their knowledge freely and adopting the best practices of others. The galaxy had benefited enormously from human participation, but the humans had never demanded recognition or special treatment for their contributions. They had simply worked to make things better wherever they found opportunities for improvement. Now they were leaving as quietly and efficiently as they had arrived, taking their knowledge and expertise with them, not out of spite or revenge, but because they had been politely asked to go. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was about to discover exactly how much it had come to depend on the chaotic, disruptive, impossibly helpful species that had just calmly walked away. The first major system failure occurred 17 hours after the last human transport cleared galactic space boundaries. The quantum communications network linking the central core worlds experienced a cascade breakdown that would take months to repair properly. In the growing silence between the stars, alien civilizations began to understand what they had lost. 6 weeks had passed since the last human transport ship disappeared beyond the edge of galactic space. High Chancellor Vorthak stood in his private chambers, staring at reports that painted an increasingly dire picture of galactic civilization's rapid decline. The first crisis had been the communications network. Without human technicians maintaining the quantum relay stations, messages between star systems now took days instead of minutes. Trade coordination had become nearly impossible. Military command structures were fragmenting as fleets lost real-time contact with their headquarters. But that was only the beginning. Dr. Kellen Vesh materialized in Vorthak's chamber through emergency holographic projection, his crystalline form flickering with unstable energy patterns that indicated extreme stress. Chancellor, we have a Category 5 economic emergency developing in the Outer Rim territories. Vesh's harmonics carried undertones of panic. The agricultural worlds are reporting massive crop failures. Vorthak's tentacles curled in confusion. Crop failures? The growing seasons are optimal according to our meteorological data. The crops aren't dying from weather, Vesh explained rapidly. The human agricultural specialists didn't just manage the farms, they had redesigned the entire soil treatment process for 43 worlds. When they left, they took the bioengineered bacteria cultures that keep the soil fertile. Surely we can reproduce their methods? Vesh's crystalline structure dimmed. The bacteria cultures were genetically modified using human biotechnology. Our scientists are studying the documentation the humans left behind, but they estimate it will take at least 2 years to fully understand and replicate the process. Meanwhile, the current crops are failing, and next season's planting will yield perhaps 30% of normal harvests. Vorthak felt a chill run through his nervous system. 43 agricultural worlds fed over 600 billion people across dozens of species. A 70% reduction in food production would cause famine on a scale not seen in galactic civilization for millennia. What about emergency food reserves? Being depleted rapidly, Vesh admitted. The humans had optimized our distribution networks to operate with minimal storage overhead, efficient but not resilient when supply chains collapse. Before Vorthak could respond, another emergency signal interrupted their conversation. Commander Zik's image appeared alongside Vesh's projection, the Vex leader's mandibles clicking in distress. Chancellor, we have immediate military concerns, Zik buzzed urgently. The Thermal Collective has resumed their territorial expansion in the Rigel sector. Our border defenses are not responding effectively to their new assault patterns. Deploy additional fleet units to reinforce the sector, Vorthak ordered. Sir, that's the problem. Zik's antennae twitched nervously. Our tactical response protocols were all developed in consultation with human military advisors. Without their strategic oversight, our formations are operating 40% below optimal efficiency. The Thermal Collective appears to have recognized this weakness and adjusted their tactics accordingly. Vorthak's mind raced through the implications. The Thermal Collective was a moderate-sized, aggressive civilization that the Vex had successfully contained for decades. If the Vex could no longer maintain their military superiority, other hostile species would quickly recognize the opportunity. Furthermore, Zik continued, our early warning systems have degraded significantly. Human-designed sensor algorithms were responsible for detecting 70% of potential threats before they became active problems. We're essentially operating blind compared to our previous capabilities. A new projection joined the growing conference as Whisper in Void manifested in the chamber. The ethereal being's gaseous form swirled with agitation. Additional crisis developing, the Ethereal Collective's representative announced without preamble. Industrial production collapsing across multiple sectors. Human manufacturing techniques integrated into production chains throughout galactic space. Specify the scope, Vorthak demanded. Starship construction down 60%. Electronics manufacturing down 75%. Medical equipment production nearly ceased entirely, Whisper in Void reported. Human precision manufacturing standards cannot be replicated with current alien technology. Quality degradation forcing entire product categories offline. Dr. Vesh's projection flickered as his stress levels continued to climb. It's worse than production problems. The humans had developed quality control processes that prevented dangerous defects. Without those protocols, we're seeing safety failures in equipment that was previously reliable. Explain, Vorthak commanded. 3 atmospheric processors failed catastrophically this week. 2 transport ships suffered life support malfunctions. A medical facility's surgical equipment malfunctioned during 7 operations, Vesh listed grimly. In each case, the equipment passed our standard safety checks but failed because we're no longer testing for problems the humans had identified and prevented. Commander Zik's mandibles clicked rapidly. Military equipment showing similar degradation patterns. Weapon systems that functioned reliably for decades are now experiencing unpredictable failures. Our technicians don't understand the maintenance protocols the humans developed. The chamber fell silent as the 4 leaders contemplated the scope of the crisis. Humanity's century-long integration into galactic civilization had been so gradual and helpful that none of them had realized how dependent their societies had become on human expertise. What about the other council members? Vorthak asked finally. Are Nexus Prime and the machine intelligences experiencing similar problems? Whisper in Void's form contracted slightly. Nexus Prime reports significant difficulties. Human software engineers had optimized many machine intelligence processes. Without ongoing updates and maintenance, artificial intelligence systems showing decreased efficiency and increased error rates. A new emergency signal chimed through the chamber's communication system. Vorthak activated the receiver to find himself facing a Quarren trade minister whose crystalline structure was pulsing with barely controlled panic. Chancellor, forgive the interruption, but we have an immediate crisis in the Vega commercial zone, the minister resonated frantically. The primary space station's life support systems are failing. Deploy emergency repair teams, Vorthak ordered. Sir, that's the problem. The station's environmental systems were upgraded with human atmospheric processing technology 15 years ago. Our repair teams don't understand how the upgraded systems function. The original documentation was replaced with human technical specifications that our engineers cannot interpret quickly enough. Vorthak felt his cardiac organs skip several beats. The Vega commercial zone was one of the busiest trade hubs in galactic space, housing over 50 million beings from dozens of species. If the station's life support failed, it would be the largest disaster in recorded galactic history. How long before critical failure? He asked. 18 hours, possibly less, the minister replied. We've contacted every available expert in atmospheric engineering, but none have experience with the human modifications. Dr. Vesh's projection interrupted. Chancellor, This is a pattern repeating across galactic space. Human engineering improvements were adopted widely because they were superior to existing technology. But the improvements were so advanced that our specialists never learned the underlying principles. Are you telling me that we're technologically dependent on a species we just banished from galactic space? Vorthak asked with growing horror. Not dependent, Whisper and Void corrected. Integrated. Humans didn't replace our technology. They improved it. But the improvements require understanding that left with them. Commander Zeke buzzed with agitation. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Without human diplomatic mediation, 3 minor territorial disputes have escalated to armed conflict. The crystalline hegemony and the Void Runners are mobilizing fleets against each other over mining rights that humans had negotiated a treaty for just last year. Can we not simply reference the existing treaty? Vorthak asked. The treaty was written using human diplomatic language that incorporated psychological principles from both species, Zik explained. Neither side can agree on what the treaty actually means without human interpreters to explain the cultural nuances. Vorthak's mind struggled to process the cascade of crises. In 6 weeks, galactic civilization was experiencing food shortages, industrial collapse, military vulnerabilities, infrastructure failures, and diplomatic breakdowns, all simultaneously. What about seeking consultation from the departing humans? He suggested desperately. Perhaps emergency technical assistance? Dr. Vesh's crystalline form grew even dimmer. I attempted to contact their convoy 3 weeks ago. They were polite but firm. They are respecting the Council's decision that all human presence be removed from galactic space. They interpreted consultation requests as violations of the banishment order. But surely in emergency situations, Vorthak began. They offered to provide detailed technical documentation and suggested we develop our own expertise, Vesh interrupted. Completely respectful, completely unhelpful. They're not refusing to help out of spite. They're refusing to help because we ordered them to leave. Whisper and Void's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. Analysis indicates humans interpreted banishment order literally. All human presence removed includes human knowledge, human assistance, human consultation, they complying precisely with Council demands. A horrible realization began to dawn on Vorthak. They're not punishing us. They're simply doing exactly what we told them to do. Affirmative, Zeke confirmed. Humans following orders with characteristic efficiency and thoroughness. Problem is that orders were extremely poorly conceived. Another emergency signal interrupted their discussion. This time the caller was Nexus Prime, the ancient machine intelligence whose computational power normally allowed for extremely calm and logical communication. Today, however, the AI's voice carried stress patterns that Vorthak had never heard before. Council members, we have reached critical system failure threshold, Nexus Prime announced without preamble. Machine intelligence networks across galactic space experiencing cascade breakdowns due to lack of human software maintenance protocols. Surely your people can maintain their own technology, Vorthak protested. Negative. Human programmers introduced optimization algorithms that improved our processing efficiency by 300% over past 50 years. We adopted these improvements because they were superior. However, algorithms rely on continuous adaptation protocols that only human programmers understood fully. The ancient AI paused before continuing. Without ongoing optimization, machine intelligence networks reverting to pre-human efficiency levels, computational capacity reduced to 30% of recent norms, many critical systems will fail within days. Vorthak felt the last vestiges of hope drain from his system. The machine intelligences controlled transportation networks, power distribution systems, and communication infrastructure throughout galactic space. If they reverted to 30% efficiency, modern galactic civilization would simply cease to function. How many critical systems are affected? He asked weakly. All of them, Nexus Prime replied with mechanical precision. Humans improved every major technological system they encountered. Improvements were so significant that reverting to previous versions requires complete infrastructure rebuilding. Dr. Vesh's projection flickered as his stress-induced energy fluctuations intensified. Chancellor, I've been analyzing the scope of human integration over the past century. The results are catastrophic. Show me, Vorthak ordered, though he dreaded the answer. Humans participated in approximately 78% of all major galactic infrastructure projects over the past 100 years, Vesh began. They contributed critical expertise to 94% of technological advancement initiatives. They provided essential services to 67% of all inhabited worlds. The numbers continued relentlessly as Vesh detailed the scope of human involvement in galactic civilization. Food production, transportation, communication, manufacturing, defense, diplomacy, medicine, education, entertainment, research. There was virtually no aspect of modern galactic society that hadn't been improved by human contributions. More critically, Vesh continued, humans shared their knowledge freely and trained alien specialists wherever possible. However, human learning methods differed significantly from standard galactic education protocols. They emphasized practical experience and adaptive thinking rather than memorization of established procedures. Meaning what exactly? Vorthak asked, though he suspected he already knew. Meaning that when humans departed, they took not just their knowledge but their entire approach to problem-solving, Vesh explained. Alien specialists trained in human techniques cannot replicate human results without ongoing collaboration with human experts. Commander Zik's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. So we cannot simply hire replacement humans or develop substitute expertise quickly? Negative, Nexus Prime confirmed. Human expertise development required decades of cross-cultural collaboration. Cannot be replicated without human participants. Whisper in Void's form contracted into a tight spiral of agitation. Additional complication. Humans were only species capable of effective collaboration with all galactic species simultaneously. Psychological compatibility unique among known sapient species. The chamber fell into silence as the council members contemplated the impossible situation they had created. They had banished the one species capable of holding their diverse civilization together, and that species had politely complied with their demands. What are our options? Vorthak asked finally. Immediate term, crisis management and damage control, Dr. Vesh replied. Mid-term, attempt to rebuild capabilities using pre-human technologies. Long-term, complete restructuring of galactic civilization to function without human expertise. Timeline for stabilization? Best case scenario, 15 to 20 years to achieve pre-human technological and social stability, Vesh estimated. Worst case, complete civilizational collapse within 6 months. Vorthak's heart sank as he realized the magnitude of their miscalculation. The Council had viewed human unpredictability and innovation as threats to galactic order. They had failed to recognize that those same qualities were essential to galactic civilization's continued advancement and stability. And the humans themselves? He asked quietly. Returning to Sol system as ordered, Whisper in Void reported. No indications of distress or difficulty. They appear to be adapting to isolation efficiently. Of course they were, Vorthak thought bitterly. Humans were nothing if not adaptable. They would rebuild their civilization within their home system and probably emerge stronger than before. While galactic civilization collapsed around the empty space where humanity used to be. The bitter irony was not lost on any of them. They had expelled humans for being disruptive to galactic order, only to discover that humans were essential to galactic order. Without them, there was no order at all, only chaos spreading faster than any of them had imagined possible. The galaxy was learning what the humans had always known. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is get exactly what you ask for. 3 months after humanity's departure, High Chancellor Vorthak stood in what had once been the Galactic Council's primary assembly chamber. Half the seats were empty now, not by choice, but because their occupants could no longer maintain the technology necessary to travel to council meetings. The once magnificent chamber showed signs of deteriorating maintenance. Lights flickered intermittently as power distribution systems struggled without human optimization protocols. The great crystalline displays that had shown real-time data from across the galaxy now showed mostly error messages and communication failures. Dr. Kellen Vesh materialized through one of the few remaining functional holographic projectors, his crystalline structure noticeably dimmed from stress-induced energy depletion. Over the past months, he had aged more than in the previous decade combined. "Chancellor!" Vesh resonated with exhaustion. "I bring the final economic assessment report." Vorthak braced himself. Each weekly report had been worse than the last. "Proceed. Galactic GDP has declined by 67%. Industrial production is at 22% of pre-departure levels. Agricultural output has stabilized at approximately 30% of previous yields, but only because we've abandoned 40% of the farming worlds entirely." The numbers hit Vorthak like physical blows, but Vesh continued relentlessly. "Transportation networks are operating at 15% efficiency. Intersystem trade has effectively collapsed. Medical technology failures have resulted in a 15% increase in preventable deaths across all species. Educational systems are reverting to pre-technological methods on most worlds." "What about the emergency reconstruction efforts?" Vorthak asked weakly. "Proceeding slowly. Our best estimates suggest it will take 40 years to rebuild technological capabilities to pre-human levels, assuming no additional system failures." Vesh paused before delivering the worst news. "However, we continue to discover new dependencies weekly. Each discovery sets back our timeline considerably. Through the chamber's deteriorating communication system, Commander Zik's image appeared with significant static distortion. The Vex military leader looked haggard, his normally pristine exoskeleton showing stress fractures. "Chancellor, I must report total failure of our defensive posture," Zik buzzed grimly. "The Thermal Collective has seized 17 systems in the past month. The Void Runners have expanded their territory by 40%. 3 minor civilizations have declared independence from galactic authority." "Deploy additional fleet assets," Vorthak ordered automatically. "Sir, we no longer possess effective fleet coordination capabilities. Our ships can fight individually, but complex battle formations are beyond our current tactical abilities. Meanwhile, our enemies have apparently retained human-trained mercenary advisors who are using our former capabilities against us." Vorthak's tentacles curled in confusion. "Human mercenaries? I thought they had all departed galactic space." "Not humans themselves," Zeke clarified. "Alien species that were trained in human military techniques before the departure. They're now selling their expertise to anyone willing to pay, including our enemies." The implications hit Vorthak like a cold wave. Humans hadn't just taken their own knowledge with them, they had trained thousands of alien specialists who now possessed human expertise without human ethical constraints. Whisper and Void's projection flickered into existence, the ethereal being's form more unstable than ever before. "Confirming similar patterns across all sectors. Alien specialists with human training establishing independent consulting services. They possess partial human knowledge, but lack human judgment and collaborative ethics." "Are these consultants available for hire by the Council?" Vorthak asked hopefully. "Negative. They demand payment rates the Council cannot afford, given current economic collapse. Additionally, they are prioritizing clients who offer long-term contracts and political autonomy. Many are establishing independent power bases using human expertise." Dr. Vesh's crystalline structure pulsed with alarm. "Chancellor, This creates a new crisis. These independent operators possess advanced knowledge, but lack the cultural integration that made humans effective collaborators. They're introducing human techniques without human wisdom. Before Vorthak could respond, an emergency alert echoed through the chamber. Nexus Prime's ancient voice carried overtones of system strain that suggested the machine intelligence was operating far beyond safe parameters. Council emergency session required immediately, Nexus Prime announced. Critical infrastructure failure cascading beyond containment thresholds. Specify the nature of the emergency, Vorthak commanded. Multiple simultaneous failures across primary systems. Power generation declining due to fusion reactor maintenance failures. Atmospheric processors on 37 worlds experiencing critical malfunctions. Transportation network experiencing complete breakdown in 17 sectors. The ancient AI paused for several seconds, an eternity in machine intelligence terms, before continuing. Additionally, we have detected unauthorized modifications to critical systems by alien specialists attempting to implement human techniques without proper understanding. Their interventions are causing more damage than the original problems. Vorthak felt his cardiovascular system struggle under the stress. How much time do we have? Current trajectory suggests complete infrastructure collapse within 60 days. However, this estimate assumes no additional interference by unqualified specialists. Dr. Vesh's form flickered as he processed emergency data streams. Chancellor, I'm receiving reports of civil unrest on over 200 worlds. Populations are demanding restoration of human-era services and capabilities. Can we not simply explain that humans are no longer available? Vorthak asked desperately. The populations don't care about political decisions, Zik interjected. They want food distribution networks that function, medical equipment that works reliably, and transportation systems that don't fail randomly. They've lived with human-enhanced technology for a century. Returning to primitive conditions is unacceptable to them. Whisper in Void's projection swirled with agitation. Worse complications developing. Some populations demanding contact with departed humans directly. They view Council decision as illegal seizure of essential services. The Council acted within its legal authority, Vorthak protested. Legality irrelevant to populations facing starvation and system failures, Nexus Prime observed with mechanical precision. Civil order breaking down as populations lose faith in governmental capability. A new communication signal interrupted their discussion. The caller was a Quarren administrator whose crystalline structure was flashing emergency colors. Chancellor, we have a disaster in the Kepler 442 system, the administrator resonated frantically. The medical facility that was treating Vex Queen Death has suffered a complete containment failure. Commander Zeke's mandibles clicked rapidly. Explain the scope of the containment failure. The research facility was attempting to recreate the human cure using alien technology. The containment protocols failed because they didn't understand the human safety procedures. The disease has now infected the entire research staff and is spreading to the general population. Vorthak felt the room spinning around him. How many people are at risk? The entire system population of 47 million, the administrator replied. The human research team had been 3 months away from completing the cure when they departed. Our team has been working for 3 months and estimates they need at least 2 more years to achieve similar results. Can we evacuate the system? Zik asked. Negative. The quarantine protocols necessary to prevent galactic spread require technology and expertise we no longer possess. The humans had developed specialized containment procedures specifically for this disease. Dr. Vesh's projection dimmed further as he accessed additional data streams. Chancellor, this represents a pattern occurring throughout galactic space. Alien specialists are attempting to continue human research projects without understanding the safety protocols that made the research possible. Are you telling me that these specialists are creating new problems while trying to solve existing ones? Vorthak asked with growing horror. Affirmative, Nexus Prime confirmed. Incomplete understanding of human methods leading to systematic introduction of additional complications across multiple sectors. The chamber fell silent as the council members contemplated their impossible situation. They had expelled humans for disrupting galactic order, only to discover that galactic order required human participation to function. Now, in desperation, alien specialists were trying to replicate human expertise and accidentally making everything worse. What about direct contact with the human convoy? Vorthak asked quietly. Emergency consultation under extreme circumstances? Whisper in Void's form contracted tightly. Already attempted through multiple diplomatic channels. Human response consistent. They respect council decision and will not violate banishment order. But surely they understand the humanitarian crisis they could help resolve. They understand completely, Dr. Vesh replied. They offered to provide detailed technical documentation and expressed sympathy for our difficulties. However, they maintained that consultation would constitute human presence in galactic space, which the Council explicitly prohibited. Commander Zeke buzzed with frustration. So they're willing to let billions die rather than violate our banishment order? Negative, Nexus Prime corrected. Analysis indicates humans are respecting galactic sovereignty as requested. Council demanded removal of all human presence, humans interpreting this as complete non-interference with galactic affairs. The horrible irony struck Vorthak with crystal clarity. The humans were demonstrating perfect respect for galactic authority by refusing to interfere, even when their interference could save millions of lives. They were following the Council's orders so thoroughly that they wouldn't violate those orders even for humanitarian reasons. What if we modified the original order? Vorthak suggested desperately. Emergency amendments to allow limited human consultation? Dr. Vesh's crystalline structure flickered with analysis patterns. Legally possible but practically complicated. Original order required complete departure of all humans from galactic space. Selective readmission would require formal council vote and specific invitation protocols. How long would that process take? Minimum 6 months for proper diplomatic procedures, Vesh estimated. However, the humans are currently 3 months travel time away from galactic space. Even emergency recall would take substantial time. Whisper in Void added grimly. Additionally, humans may decline invitation. They invested considerable resources in departure and resettlement. They may choose to remain isolated rather than risk future banishment. They were banished once for being disruptive, Commander Zik observed. Why would they risk returning to face potential future persecution? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The Council had demonstrated that they viewed human participation as a threat to be eliminated. From the human perspective, returning to galactic space would be volunteering to be scapegoated again the next time alien civilizations became uncomfortable with the pace of change. What about our current crisis timeline? Vorthak asked. Infrastructure collapse progressing faster than anticipated, Nexus Prime reported. Current estimate, 45 days until critical system failures make galactic civilization unsustainable. Vorthak's tentacles went numb as he processed the mathematics. Even if they voted immediately to recall the humans, even if the humans agreed to return immediately, even if they could travel at maximum speed, they couldn't return before galactic civilization collapsed completely. Are there any other options? He asked weakly. Dr. Vesh was silent for several minutes as he ran calculations. One possibility remains, he said finally. The humans left detailed technical documentation for all their improvements. If we could assemble sufficient alien specialists and dedicate massive resources to crash training programs, we might be able to understand their methods well enough to prevent complete collapse. What would that require? Approximately 60% of our remaining functional specialists would need to abandon their current responsibilities to focus entirely on understanding human documentation. The learning curve suggests minimum 2-year timeline for basic competency. Commander Zick's mandibles clicked rapidly as he calculated the implications. 60% of our specialists abandoning current duties would accelerate the collapse by months. Correct, Vesh agreed grimly. We would need to sacrifice immediate stability to gain long-term sustainability. Success is not guaranteed, and failure would be catastrophic. Whisper in Void's projections swirled with patterns that suggested deep computational analysis. Alternative possibility: formal capitulation and request for human aid without conditions. Explain, Vorthak demanded. Complete admission of error. Public acknowledgement that banishment was mistake. Unconditional invitation for humans to return with guarantee of full autonomy and protection from future political interference. The chamber fell silent as the council members contemplated the humiliation this would represent. They would be formally admitting that their ancient civilizations could not function without the guidance of a species barely a century into galactic society. Would the humans accept such an invitation? Vorthak asked. Unknown, Nexus Prime replied. Human psychology suggests they prioritize long-term stability over short-term advantage. They may prefer continued isolation to risking future persecution. Dr. Vesh added quietly. Additionally, humans may have developed alternative plans during their isolation. They may no longer need or want galactic integration. The thought chilled Vorthok to his core. Humanity was the most adaptable species the galaxy had ever encountered. 3 months of isolation might be long enough for them to develop completely independent civilization structures. They might emerge from isolation as a galactic superpower rather than eager participants in alien society. What do we know about human activities since departure? Vorthak asked. Minimal data, Whisper in Void admitted. Long-range sensors detect significant industrial activity in Sol system. Analysis suggests major infrastructure development, but specific details unclear at this distance. Commander Zick buzzed thoughtfully. Humans had access to advanced technology from dozens of species plus their own innovations. Combining that knowledge in isolation could produce rapid technological advancement. You're suggesting that humans might emerge from isolation more advanced than when they left? Vorthak asked with growing alarm. Possible, Nexus Prime confirmed. Human innovation rate historically accelerated under pressure. Isolation and need to rebuild could stimulate unprecedented technological development. The implications hit Vorthak like a physical blow. The galaxy might not only collapse without human expertise, it might also face eventual confrontation with a humanity that had spent years developing advanced technology in isolation, with no reason to trust alien civilizations, and every reason to view them as potential threats. So our choices are to collapse quickly, trying to understand human documentation, collapse slowly from continued degradation, or risk future confrontation with a potentially hostile human civilization that we taught to mistrust us. Vorthak summarized bleakly. Essentially correct, Dr. Vesh confirmed, although there is one additional consideration. Which is? The humans were not the only species banished from galactic space throughout history, Vesh reminded them. 3 other civilizations were expelled over the past 5 millennia for various reasons. If galactic civilization collapses, those species may view it as an opportunity to reclaim their former territories. Vorthak felt his consciousness wavering as the scope of their catastrophic miscalculation became fully apparent. They hadn't just expelled humanity from galactic space, they had demonstrated to every species that galactic civilization was fragile enough to destroy itself through political decisions. They had revealed their own incompetence and vulnerability to anyone paying attention. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the worst thing you can do is get exactly what you ask for. The Council had demanded order and stability. Now they were about to get perfect order, the order of complete civilizational collapse, with stability measured in years of darkness, before something new could emerge from the ruins of their mistake. In the growing silence of failing communication systems, as lights flickered and distant worlds went dark, the galaxy began its descent into an age of chaos that would be remembered as the time when the stars themselves forgot how to shine.